Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the Ojai City Council and Ojai Redevelopment Agency, successor agency, regular meeting for June 14, 2016 to order. Prior to us starting, anybody that wants to address us on any items that are on the agenda, please fill out a speaker's card, identify the agenda item that you wish to speak to us about, and pass it on to the clerk over here, Amber. And if I could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Haney?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Here.
Mayor Blatz?
Here. And Councilwoman Clapp has an excused absence this evening. If I could get Councilman Haney to lead us in the pledge.
Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We don't have any presentations this evening, so this is the time on our agenda when we take comments from the public on items that's not on our agenda. You can bring up anything that involves our city, and we can listen to you. We can ask questions, but typically all we can do is listen and put it on to a future agenda item if we wish to really discuss it. Only because it's not on the agenda, so people that may want to discuss it, we put it on the agenda so they'll know about it. But I do have some speakers cards this evening, and the first one I have is Dennis Leary. Dennis?
Good evening. I wanted to talk to you about something that is definitely, in my mind, city business, but it's not the normal type of city business. I'm concerned about something. It doesn't directly involve you, but it involves our country. And if what I think might be possibly going to happen, it will definitely involve us, because it can involve everybody. And that is the issue of safety. I'm going to address it in that way. I think that coming down the road, it's very possible we're going to have another financial slowdown. That would be the best way to put it. All the signs, a lot of signs, and a lot of people are saying, we can't go on like this. We're in a bubble. Trump said not too long ago, bubble. Remember, you heard it here first, bubble. We are in a huge bubble nationally. I'm sure you know this already. There's, we've got such a big debt, just plain old debt is in the trillions. We've got unfunded liabilities in the trillions. We've got these strange animals called derivatives hanging out there in the trillions. I mean, it's like 200 trillion. There's no way we're going to ever repay that kind of stuff. And it's actually a balloon that's getting bigger and bigger and faster. So how in the world are we going to do it? There's going to at least have to be some kind of a reset or something, and it won't be. And I'm looking at this fall election time, because we've had a pattern in 2000, 2008, now 2016, when we've had these economic problems. So my point is that I think that Ojai, we all of us as citizens and public officials, we need to at least get psychologically prepared for what might happen. I hope it doesn't happen, because I love Ojai just the way it is. I don't want to see any change, but we're not going to have any control over this. If that balloon gets away from us, you know how the balloons, that balloon, or if it, or worse even, if it pops. I'm talking about the finances. And the people in Washington, I don't trust a bit. I mean, I trust you, but I don't trust these folks in Washington. I don't think they're competent. I don't think they know what they're doing, unless they're getting orders from above, from somebody who's really running the show, which I think is the case. And this, if that is the case, we could possibly be being set up for something to benefit certain people who don't have to be named. But my point is that I think as citizens, we ought to start thinking about safety in terms of this economics that might happen to us. And what are we going to do to get prepared? That's the whole point. Thank you much.
Thank you, Dennis. Barry Betlock?
Good evening. Barry Betlock, City of Ojai resident. The reason I'm here tonight is as a result of a very unpleasant experience with this council and an issue that I've had that I never could get a hearing on. And I thought about how to approach this. I could just walk away and just forget it. But if I walk away and just forget it, I can do that for myself, what it sets up is a situation where somebody else is going to follow me, and I'm sure some people have preceded me. And there must be a better solution than what I found. After my, as I said, unfortunate incident with this council, I went and sought legal counsel. And the individual that I spoke to said that I had a cause of action, but if I pursued it, it would be the road to nowhere because I would be going after deep pockets and I would never see a settlement until I was an old man, and I'm already an old man, and so that wasn't in the cards for me. And I thought, how frustrating that I didn't even get a hearing. I could not get so much as a peep out of any of you over a legitimate item that's cost me thousands and thousands of dollars out of my pocket that I went into with good faith based on a city policy. So I'm going to say this to you. I think in the interest of the citizenry of this community, there should be a measure short of having to seek legal counsel and spend time that most people don't have and spend money that most people don't have. And I would like to propose this council consider an ombudsman for this city, for the citizens of this city. So when there was something that was amiss, I don't mean we made this decision to go left instead of right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things that were done improperly. I'm talking about malfeasance. I'm talking about things where there's a cause of action. There's something wrong, and it gets swept under the carpet. And I think people should have an opportunity, short of seeking legal counsel, to have somebody that they can go to and plead their case, and if they have a legitimate point, have something done about it. And the ombudsman has been very successful in a lot of venues, both in the private sector as well as the public sector. Some of you may well know it started out, the modern day version of it started out in Scandinavia and is still used widely. It's used in the EU and it's used in the United States. And I think, like I said, I don't want to see anybody follow my footsteps into what I had to go through. I don't want to see that for anybody. So I would urge you to at least give a fair consideration to this. Thank you.
Barry, let me ask you a question for purposes of people that may be watching, because you never described what your issue was. Did this have to do with the second dwelling unit or the short-term rental? Explain what it is that you were talking about so that other people will hear.
All right. I submitted an application to turn part of my home, a granny flat in essence, into a second dwelling unit, and worked with the city to do that. And as a result, I completed all the tasks that were outlined to me by the city inspectors, and I, after 2-3 months of work and paying fees, I received a certificate saying I have a second dwelling unit, which is all fine on the surface. In that policy, that was a 20-page policy from the city, it wasn't something we negotiated. In that policy on page 2, and I can't quote, but I can reasonably paraphrase because it was very short, it said, there shall be no limitations on rentals or leases for second dwelling units. And I took that as written. I think it was pretty straightforward to say this meant what it said. So when I found out later here at the chambers and listening to Councilwoman Clapp tell me that second dwelling units in no way were going to be allowed as short-term rental venues. I was shocked. And I was not only shocked, but by that time I was probably out $15,000 or $20,000. And I could not get Mrs. Clapp to speak to this point. I asked the mayor, and he didn't want to address it. And none of the rest of you gentlemen decided to come forward on this. So I retreated into the night. Not happy, but I did what I could. And so now I'm saying, I know for me, there's no future for this for me. But I truly don't want to see anybody else, for whatever reason, suffer this kind of thing. It's not right, and the people in this community deserve more than that.
Okay. Thank you, Barry. And let me just point out for your benefit and for members of the public that if you have an issue with anything that goes on within the city, the first person that you should contact if you want to go to somebody independent is the city clerk. The city clerk does not report to the city manager. The city clerk does not report to the city council. The city clerk is an elected position. We're going to be appointing someone tonight as the interim city clerk, but then in November, that clerk will be elected by the people. And that, one of the major purposes of the city clerk is to be the voice and the go-to for the public. So please don't forget about utilizing that resource. And if anybody has any issues with anything that we do, whether it be what Mr. Betlock is referring to, or any issues that you may think we're doing something wrong, the city clerk acts independently of us. So please use that resource if you would. Thank you, Barry. The next speaker is Deborah Pendry from the Ojai Valley Green Coalition.
Thank you, Mayor Blatz, council members. I just wanted to share a little bit more. As we've shared in the past, we have three main focus areas, one being regenerative community, one local food, healthy soil, and the third one, water security. And to speak to the latter, the water security, we have a campaign going on now called Save Our Water Ojai. I wanted to share with you the mission of this program is to catalyze a community-wide and collaborative watershed approach to saving and retaining water in residential, commercial, and public landscapes. The coalition strives to advance the water security of the Ojai Valley by promoting and sharing knowledge, resources, and opportunities to encourage water-saving practices needed to convert a high water use landscape into a beautiful water-efficient one. By background, as we all know, the Ventura River watershed is 100% dependent upon local surface water and groundwater supplies. Imported water is not an option. Our local water independence is threatened by decreasing water availability caused by an extended drought, hotter and drier weather patterns, arguably, I guess, due to climate disruption and limited options for increasing our supplies. The Ojai Valley has an average annual rainfall of 23 inches, with the last 4-year average, which is 2011 to 15, dropping to 10.5 inches. So wisely managing our water supply in years of scarcity and abundance as a new way of life is imperative. And I just wanted to share, a couple of weeks ago, we held a presentation called Living with Drought, the Politics, Practices, and Science, and we had over 150 attendees. It was well attended. Our keynote speaker, Tom Ash, came from the Inland Empire. He has almost 30 years of experience in the area, and he, along with many things, presented a very innovative water rate structure that has been very successful in the Inland Empire. So we were very excited about that and the information that he shared and the fact that he's willing to be a resource for our community. And the coalition is hosting a gray water workshop this Saturday, June 18th. You can go to our OjaiValleyGreenCoalition.org website. On the left-hand column, click on Save Our Water, Ojai, and then get all of your information to be able to register for that class. And it's $10 for Green Coalition members and city residents. We do show the City of Ojai as a sponsor of that, as we have on everything the last year. So we hope to fill that. And the last thing, just as a heads up, FYI, August through October of this year, we will again be doing our Solarize Ojai Valley program, and at the next meeting, bringing up the idea of waiving the permit fee again as a way to support getting more renewable energy into our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Scott Eicher?
Good evening, council and staff. I'm here to give the Ojai Valley Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors approved comment on the Plan Don't Ban initiative. The so-called Plan Don't Ban initiative wants to legalize short-term rentals, or STRs, within the city limits of Ojai. The real question for Ojai voters is whether doing so, and specifically doing so under the auspices of this initiative, will irrevocably change Ojai for the worse or not. Certainly, if this passes, the zoning ordinances in Ojai will need to be rewritten to come into compliance with the new ordinance as it would become if passed. There are points in the Plan Don't Ban initiative that could easily provoke legal challenges, including limits on the number of STRs, where they will be allowed, who can own them, and where the owners must reside. If any or all of these limits are thrown out by a court's decision, and the rest of the initiative is allowed to stand as drafted as its language actually reads, then Ojai residents could end up with very little, if any, control of regulations pertaining to the short-term rental businesses within the Ojai city limits. Furthermore, having no restrictions on the number, location, or ownership of STRs would necessarily bring an immediate change to the character of the residential zones within the city limits and the overall character of the city and the valley as a whole. Ojai's hotels are full almost every weekend, and especially so on national holiday weekends and other weekends when we have festivals, tennis tournament, and independent school graduations. Ojai is a small town with limited resources and a limited infrastructure. This must be considered when we think about allowing non-regulated short-term rentals to proliferate. Tourism supplies the bulk of our income as a city. People come here for the quiet, natural beauty of this valley and to see what a true community is like. If our residential zones become overrun with short-term rentals, we will no longer be what visitors come here to see. The Chamber has repeatedly spoken at City Council meetings concerning the issue of short-term rentals, and we have said we believe that strictly regulating them through city ordinances and city zoning restrictions is the best solution. However, this initiative is a bad solution to the issue. If this initiative is passed, the city will not be able to pass any ordinances that conflict with it. Any changes to the initiative will have to be passed by a vote of the residents of Ojai. In essence, the city will lose all control of short-term rental issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I don't have any other speakers cards for this portion of the agenda. Is this for public comment? Yes, okay. If you'd give the card to Amber, and then you'd be right here.
Hello, my name is Vega, and I'm a member of the Ventura County Cannabis Alliance, and our group is hosting a free event that we wanted to invite Ojai Mayor, City Council, Sheriff, and anyone in the group to attend. It's a free event on Friday, June 24th from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. in Oxnard, and it includes a free breakfast. We're encouraging law enforcement officers, elected officials, and staff to attend, and the event is called Medical Cannabis: Separating Fact from Fiction. We have 3 great speakers in the industry and from the community, and they are considered subject matter experts for medical cannabis. The first speaker is Dr. Behrman, who is a clinically knowledgeable physician in medical cannabis, and he'll be speaking about the endocannabinoid system and how that system interacts with our bodies. Dr. Behrman is a resident of Goleta for over 40 years and has spent his time working in substance and drug abuse treatment and prevention programs. Our second speaker is the Honorable Jim Gray, a retired judge from Orange County, and he's been known to work creatively with repeat juvenile offenders and for his book on why drug laws have failed and what we can do about it. Finally, our third speaker at the event will be Gretchen Burns Bergman, who leads Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing and is the lead organizer for Moms United to End the War on Drugs. We've emailed a electronic evite to all city council members, so you can go ahead and RSVP through that or through our website, which is vcca420.org. We have several confirmed law enforcement members and Ventura County officials attending, so we hope to see Ojai there as well. And I have some flyers I can leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vega. Anyone else wishing to address us on public items? No? All right, I'll bring it back to the council and start with if there's any reports from council members. Councilman Haney?
Well, we had our... I'm going to wait for a, can I wait?
Yeah.
And come after
Okay.
Councilman Zavarro and Councilman Wyrick?
Mayor
Yeah.
Pro Tem Wyrick?
I'm just going to reiterate that I hope we get some publicity about the excellent job we've done on the FEMA appeal and how much that matters to everyone in the city. And we just need to give credit where credit's due for staff work on this.
Yes, thank you very much.
We'll put a press release together.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mayor
okay.
Pro Tem.
Councilman Lara?
Thank you, Mayor Blatz. Just one report. I hope I get support from council members. There's been a reoccurring issue that I've been aware of, and I've been getting multiple calls about, and we've already talked about this, about having soccer players play indoor soccer on the tennis courts. So apparently it's still occurring, and I told them that it'd be extremely important for them to come and speak at maybe a Park and Recreation Commission. But if it's okay, and if I get support from my council member, I would love to request the Parks and Recreation Commission to put that on their agenda in a near future item, as the part of a discussion item, and viewing their opportunities, because apparently you get a good crowd. People say like 30 teens, and these are ages varying from 13 to 28, 30 years old. So I mean, it's a very vast age range. So I don't know if anybody would.
I certainly concur. I mean, it's an issue, and that's the right place for the issue to be discussed.
Yeah, I agree. Could you recommend that to the Park and Recs Commission to get that on an agenda so they could discuss it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Councilman Haney?
So we had our second meeting of the, this name I always struggle with, the Ojai Libby Bowl Arts and Festivals Committee. So we had our second meeting this morning, which was, again, a great group of individuals representing the community. So we've came up with our mission statement, and I just wanted to read it. The Libby Bowl shall operate to the benefit of the entire community, utilized for a variety of artistic and cultural pursuits, serving as a destination and cultural jewel for the Ojai Valley. So that's our statement. That's what that's our goal. Our charter to the actual council. The Ojai Libby Bowl Arts and Festivals Committee is chartered to seek input from the community and observe, assess, and evaluate events, activities, and operations in the 2016-2017 Libby Bowl season. So that's what we feel we are chartered to do, and to come back to council with our observations and our recommendations at the end of the 2017 season. So,
Okay. Any comment? Yes, Councilman Lara?
There is one more thing I forgot to mention, if that's okay. We had a ad hoc committee meeting for the cultural resources, just to make sure everybody understood the direction that council wished for the ad hoc committee to take. No decisions were made. We're moving the meetings to the dais, where we're going to invite the public, and we want to make sure we start getting information, especially on the website, so that they could come up to speed and have them understand where council wants us to proceed with this issue. So it's very limited. It was Councilmember Haney's and my decision just to meet as the original group, just to make sure we understood the list that you guys wanted us before we started handing out educational information about where we're at. So that's the update. And we're hoping to have a meeting July 11th.
Okay?
I just wanted to add a little bit to that. I think there was a big discussion last night as far as what the intent of council was. And two ideas came up. One was to bring the resource committee to the public out here, or to invite members of the community to participate. And ultimately, the agreement was, the end result was that we're going to bring it out here and allow the public to speak, rather than be more inclusive in allowing specific members who had issues and concerns into the committee. So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay. Any comments on that? No? Any other reports? No? All right. Let's move on to the consent calendar. Is there any items that need to be pulled from the consent calendar?
Yes, I want to pull item 1K.
Okay. Any others?
I move the balance of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Councilmember Haney,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick,
Yes.
Mayor Blatz.
Yes. All right. Item K, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick. Or who asked that?
I
guess-
asked.
Mayor,
Blatz.
yeah, Councilman Lara, sorry about that.
This is a question for staff. I just want clarity of what, first of all, how often this is done, to have a commercial be designated as a community event, and if there's specific reasons why we are taking this avenue and allowing this designation.
So this is a new request, and if when I'm done giving my explanation, if Ms. Young has anything further she'd like to add, since she wrote the staff report. But basically, this came to us as a request from Sterling Ventures. We've not received such a request in the immediate or recent past, or to my knowledge at the city. So I think this is something new to us. Ms. Young, could you explain a little bit as to why we are doing this and what precipitated it?
Yes. So this is a fairly common in other cities. This is in order to have food, any edible items, including prepackaged or bottled water, at an event that's not done from a commercial kitchen or a licensed mobile food facility, such as a food truck. The event has to be a community event that's either run by a nonprofit or that has been designated by the city council as such. And so because Sterling Venue Ventures is not a not-for-profit, in order for them to be able to serve bottled water or to sell bottled water or anything prepackaged, it's a requirement for the Ventura County Health Department that we go through this step so that they can process them as a temporary food facility event organizer.
Any other questions?
No, I just wanted clarity. I just want to make sure that if we start getting these requests, I rather have a discussion about it, just because I think that it's I just don't know who's going to start. I don't know how we're going to make the decision on which commercial when it's a for-profit event. I feel like if it's a for-profit event, a commercial event, then they should pay their fees, but because this was the first time that it was brought to our attention, and this was a different, it just was a unique request. I would like the council to be assured what the reasons are for giving this designation and how it benefits our community, because the community events are usually nonprofits. They're there to promote and include the community and serve for the pleasure of our residents.
Sorry, Councilmember Lara, as a point of clarification, this doesn't waive any fees for Sterling Venue Ventures. This simply allows them to apply to the health department to sell bottled water at their event.
So all they're doing is selling bottled water?
They just want to sell bottled water and prepackaged items. And in order to have a permit from the health department, which is required, they have to have this designation. Otherwise, they can't sell any food or beverages at their event.
So there's no other method or approach of selling water or purchase or.
They can have a mobile food facility.
Okay, so there is another approach.
There is another approach. They would have to convince a mobile food facility to come to their event to distribute bottled water or prepackaged food.
Okay.
Yeah, you beat me to it, Amber. I mean, my explanation that's convincing to me is this basically says they can go and get a permit. If we don't approve it, they can't get a permit.
Right.
So I think it makes sense to do it.
Okay.
You know, and so I'm going to move approval.
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion?
Not on the motion,
Larry?
not on the motion, I apologize.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. Mr. McClary?
Just a quick comment then, and just some more clarification. So would council like us to schedule any further requests as a discussion item? If we get any subsequent request for this?
I mean, my preference as an individual council member, the statement that I made was I'd rather put it on the regular agenda as a discussion item or whatever, if it's supposed to be a public hearing, just to make sure that we know the nature of what they're asking for. In this case, obviously, he's asking for bottled water. It's not a big deal. But when it's a commercial event and it's for profit, I think we got to be careful on what we're allowing. I mean, if they have to go through a mobile, and that's my preference. I don't know how the other council members feel about this issue.
I don't object to it being agendized in the future. This is a rule of thumb.
I agree.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to our public hearings section of our agenda. Item number 2 is a design review permit, DRP 15-18, plan unit development, and this is located at 311 South Montgomery Street. Mr. McClary?
Thank you. Community Development Director Wold will be making the staff report.
Ms. Wald?
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight before you, as you stated in the record, is a design review permit plan unit development for the construction of a new single-family home at 311 South Montgomery. On May 4th, 2016, the Planning Commission reviewed this project and permit applications and recommended to the City Council an approval, along with the associated conditions of that approval. The project is a bit unique in that the single-family home design on a relatively small lot in the VMU zone district. Ordinarily, the Planning Commission would be the final permit decision maker for this relatively small-scale project, but the PD section of our municipal code requires that the City Council be the final decision maker for PD projects that request a floor area, such as this one, above 50%. And the floor area ratio for this particular project is 62%, and that's why it's before you tonight. So as you know, and read in the staff report, the existing residence and accessory structures are proposed to be demolished on this site and replaced with a new 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, single-family home towards the rear of the property. A separate detached structure containing a single-car garage and guest house is also proposed toward the front of the property. We have some statistics in here, and for you, just general statistics of the residence. It's 2,117 square feet. It's 2 stories. With 1,430 on the first floor and 680 on the second floor. Has a detached guest house garage that is proposed towards the front of the property for a total of 586 square feet, and a 262 square foot single car garage and 324 square feet of the guest house, which is characterized by the applicant as a hobby room. With that, we just provide in the staff report general regulations and our standard matrix with development standards for the VMU. And as you can see in the far column where we say consistent, there's a lot of flexibility with a project like this via the plan unit development and the decision-making bodies here. So we're saying yes based on the applicant's proposal, the recommendation by Planning Commission, and we hope City Council's proposal or approval tonight on the project, subject to the conditions of approval. We lay out all the general landscaping development standards, solar access, general plan consistency, public art, environmental review in the staff report. There's nothing of real note for me to go through. I would just make one clarification in the listing of conditions. On page 2-12, we did add condition number 4, that wasn't on the city, it wasn't on the planning commission and wasn't recommended by the planning commission, but it is something that staff's understanding is city council would like us to place on conditions going forward, and it's the applicant and property owner are prohibited from using any portion of the subject property for short-term, transient, or vacation rentals for any period of time less than 30 days in exchange for any form of compensation, as this land use is not permitted by the Ojai Municipal Code 10-2.402, Table 2-2, which lists all allowable land use in residential zones. Excuse me. This prohibition shall remain in place unless and until the Ojai Municipal Code is amended to permit this land use. Violation of this condition of approval may result in revocation of this permit in compliance with all applicable laws. So I want to make sure that you understood that why we put that in when it really didn't come from Planning Commission. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, anybody have any questions of staff?
I have a few.
Yes. Councilman
Kathleen,
Henning.
on the same thing on page 213, line item 18, you have the event of discovery or recognition of any human remains. Is that a new standard statement that we're applying to all projects of this nature?
No, so let me go over this so I want to be very careful how I answer this. So 18 is just, it's straight out of the state of California off the Native American Heritage Commission site. These are state guidelines, okay? So we've just reiterated them in here. So even though they're listed as a condition, it's really more a notification that you have to comply with that, which is, standard language. Okay.
But, well, that's fine. You answer my question.
Right, 19.
Before I go to 19, why I brought that up was the fact that I know that the Cultural Resource Ad Hoc Committee is going to be writing this or reviewing this, and I was wondering if we already have a statement that's in the books, why are we reinventing the wheel? Seems like we have one. I don't know why we're going to go through the process of creating our own. That's all.
Okay. And then 19, where it says monitoring procedures for discovery, this is the one that we've been putting on discretionary permits since way back when we had the Wild Academy. We've been doing this in different versions of it, depending on, recommendations from either the archaeologist or the Native Americans, and combine both. But it's just stating that monitoring is required for all earth disturbances except for the following, which is redistribution of already monitored soil, overcompaction of soil, import of fill. And this has been, I think we had this back on the winery too, and it became an issue, so gradually it's been refined to be more correct and accurate and more both beneficial to the applicant and the Native Americans. So if you have some issues with that, but I don't think it's new, I just think it's been refined.
And this applicant did a PAW?
No, they did a phase one. They did a phase one on the property. It said under the page 2.7, it states in the staff report that they did an extended phase one and no cultural resources were found on the project site.
Okay. All right. I just had a couple other questions. I noticed on their on their public worksheet that they had a civil sign-off, but I didn't see any soils engineer or the geology to sign off. Does that come later, or is that something that should be prior to this?
It really depends. I mean, if the site were, if it's known by the people, the professional staff working on the project, that it's something that can be handled on site, it's relatively, standard lot, we would wait and do it at building construction time rather than have the applicant do it now. If we're looking at a big site like the hospital site, when we did that, we ask that you do it ahead of time because we want to make sure that it doesn't become something that then jeopardizes your ability to accommodate on site. In other words, you have to redesign.
Well, I guess my concern was the fact that I saw a retaining wall detail, which are generally based on a soils report.
Right.
So I was just wondering if that detail is included in the permit. How did they come up with that detail without a soils report?
You may want to ask the applicant that, but like I said, generally speaking, with single-family homes, that would be at the building permit stage.
Okay. And then my last question is, they talked about doing their landscaping with gray water, and again, we could ask them when they come up here, but we got rainwater harvesting systems that are available, And it seems like this site would be a very good one for that. And you can do that harvesting systems, you can do rain gardens, but you can do a lot of these systems in conjunction with the gray water system. So I think that'd be beneficial, especially in the situation that we are as a city right now.
Well, this permit's up before you tonight, so you can add any conditions you deem appropriate.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
Any other comments? No? Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Mr. Mayor, before we hear from the applicant, we should open the public hearing.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. I'd like to hear from the applicant. Do you have anything in particular you want to talk to us about, or do you just want to answer some questions?
We're just hoping that you approve it.
Okay.
That's
thank
about
you.
it.
Okay. Councilman Haney, do you have any questions to the applicant?
Well, again, I looked at the fact that you're building the 62% of this land, and which means that there's a lot of impermeable area, roof, concrete, and my concern is the fact that we're not trying to capture any of the water that is going to be run off through the guttering system. And I didn't see a drainage plan, again, with the landscape plan.
There was one. There's a landscape plan, and there was a drainage plan also.
Okay, so I have the landscape plan. I just didn't see a drainage plan in conjunction with it. So again, my thoughts would be if it's monetarily feasible, to put in or think about some type of a cistern or a collection device along with your gray water system to water all of the water-wise and drought-tolerant plants that you are utilizing on this development. Then that would be the only thing that I'd ask.
I think the landscape plan shows that we are going to have drought-tolerant plants.
Yes.
And we are going to have gravel, and we're going to have mulch.
Yes.
And there is some area that's going to be concrete for the driveway. So I don't know, I think we tried to make it as water-wise, I guess.
Well, the plant material is absolutely water-wise. It's just the fact that the space for all the planting is limited. You're at 32% of your lot, okay? Whereas, like I said, you're at 68% of the fact that no water can penetrate. So that's roofs, concrete, and things of that nature. So you have any type of rainfall that we might get. What I'm trying to say is you're not trying to trap it. We're just allowing that to run off and into the street. And so I'm not against your project. In fact, I'm for it. I would just like to ask your landscape contractor to think about that when he creates the drainage plan.
I think there was a drainage, grading and drainage, but there was what is it called? An area, what is it called, Kathleen, where swale?
Oh, yeah, bioswale, the bioswale?
Yeah, there was a bioswale
Yeah,
included
well-
in the landscape plan.
Right.
It's a small one, I guess.
Very
I don't know,
small.
it was, from what I understand, it wasn't required, but our landscape person put it in, or it actually was done by the grading and drainage guy. He put it in.
Yeah.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to say is,
May I comment on it? One of the things that we're dealing with is the size of the lot. That's 40 feet wide and 125, I think. 150 feet deep.
Yes.
So we're trying to capture all the usable space. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the residents that's put into a village mixed-use designation. So somehow or another, that creates a different problem. The limitations of residents, applies to standard lots. But in this particular case, we're dealing with an unusual and tight location.
Something that might satisfy you would be like rain barrels? Is that what you're talking about?
no, absolutely not. Alls I'm trying to say is, prior to the project being worked on, take it back to Tom Bolstrom, your landscape architect, and talk to him and see if he can, if it's feasible, and I always say feasibility is based on money. Can you incorporate some type of a cistern or a rain garden system along with this bioswale? So I'm just saying, is there any possible way that you could collect more water, because the bioswale is just directing water. It's not gonna hold a lot of water. Whereas you could put a cistern at the bottom of that bioswale and actually collect a lot of water. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm asking you to discuss it with your landscape architect.
And if I could jump in, I think that Councilman Haynes is trying to give you friendly, his his job, he's a landscape contractor, and he knows that this might be something to explore that would be pay off for you. In other words, you still, even though they're drought tolerant plants, you still have to water them.
Right.
And it's may get a good return on incorporating something like this in your design in terms of reduced purchase of water.
Right.
That's all I think what you're trying to say.
Right. Thank you.
Look at it as a rate of return investment. That's what he's suggesting.
Okay.
If I can just say, I also think, though, because we're being asked, it's before us, because of the lot coverage being higher than what's normally allowed, that we're also concerned that if you didn't have the same lot coverage, water would be percolated on the property. Whereas because the lot coverage is as it is, it's not going to be percolated on the property, and there's going to be a lot of runoff from the property. And all that runoff is going to do is cause the water to go into our drainage system and out to the ocean. Whereas it would make a lot more sense if you followed what Councilman Haney is suggesting with Mr. Bostrom, just to see if there's a way that you can capture more water on the property because of the limited amount of percolating area and utilize it to your benefit. That's really all that we're suggesting.
Okay.
Okay? Any other comments of the applicant? No? Then I'll entertain a motion. Is there anybody in the audience? I don't have any speakers cards. Anyone wishing to address us? No? Then I'll close the public hearing.
Yep.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve, let me get back to the language here. I move approval of a resolution of the City Council of the City of Ojai, California, approving design review permit DRP 15-18 and plan development permit PDP 15-01 for construction of a single-family home, 311 South Montgomery Street, with the additional amendment given for the record by the Community Development Director.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? No? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, you're all set.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Mayor Blatz, could I just give kudos to the planning department? I felt like this staff report was easy to read, easy to follow, had the right information that I was looking for. So I definitely appreciate this staff report. It was
The lack of questions is a compliment.
Yes, the lack it definitely is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, levy and collection assessments for the Arcade Plaza Maintenance District for fiscal year 2016-17. Mr. McCleary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Grant will be giving the staff report. Mr. Grant?
Good evening, Mayor.
Grant?
Good evening, Mayor, and members of the council. This is a public hearing for the levy and collection of assessments for the Plaza Maintenance District. On April 26th, the council approved the engineer's report and declared its intent to levy and collect these assessments. This district was established in order to provide necessary funding for the maintenance and improvement of the public property within the Arcade Plaza's district boundaries. The details of services, costs, special versus general benefits, and individual property assessments are contained in the engineer's report that was approved on April 26. The projected annual revenue for this upcoming fiscal year is $195,262, which includes $33,468 of city-owned property assessments, $144,794 in private property assessments, and $17,000 in general benefits paid by the city. This is the general review. In order for this public hearing to be introduced, be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Grant? No? Thank you. I'm going to open up the public hearing. This is a public hearing. Does anyone from the public have any comments they wish to address to us? I don't have any speakers cards. Yes, Dale Hanson.
Dale Hansen. I live in the city of Ojai, and my office is back there in that area. I'm just wondering how much our tax is going to go up with this. What is the increase that will be assessed? Do we know that?
Mr. Grant, can you address that?
Yes, this is the assessment district, and it's an assessment based on the square footage of the buildings within the district. And back, you might recall in 2012, we put out to all of the parcel owners within the district a ballot measure for a 5-year increase. It was a 5% per year for 5 years because the district was underfunded at that time. So at that time, those were approved. So there's a last 5% is included as part of that assessment that was previously approved back 5 years ago. And that, you might remember, there's been substantial rehabilitation of the whole plaza and arcade area completed over the past couple of years.
Mayor.
Yes, Councilman Haney.
Mr. Grant, is there a, to that question, is there a process that each individual owner of the assessment district could actually see what their increase is going to be? Is that something that you track or that the public has access to?
Yes, definitely. The engineer's report that was approved back in April, that's got the detail for each parcel, and I'd be glad to review that with any parcel owner.
Great.
And it's, but it had that, back when it was approved, everybody knew precisely what their increases were over those years.
Thank you.
Any inquiries can be directed to your office?
Yes.
Okay.
One comment, Mayor Butts, if I could jump in on that. On that point further, the public record for this item, including the council's approval of the engineer's report on April 20th, that agenda packet does include a full copy of the engineer's report with the parcel-by-parcel detail as required by the assessments law. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Anyone else wishing to address us? No? Then I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for either further discussion, questions, or motion.
Move approval.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. Item on number 4, which is also a public hearing item, is levy and collection assessments for lighting and landscaping district number 1 and number 3 for fiscal year 2016-17. Mr. McClary?
Mr. Grant will also be giving the staff report. Mr. Grant?
Yes, this is another public hearing for the levy and collection of assessments for the lighting and landscaping districts number 1 and number 3 for fiscal year 2016-17. On May 24th, the council approved the subject engineers' reports and declared their intent to levy and collect these assessments. These districts were established to levy and collect assessments to provide necessary electricity and maintenance costs associated with the city's network of streetlights. Assessments were collected from property owners in number 1 and 3 district boundaries, which are overlays. It's the exact same district boundaries. And they secondarily, after the street lighting, provide for maintenance and improvement of sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and street trees as funding allows, as there's surplus funding. The details of these services, costs, and special versus general benefits and individual assessments are also contained in the engineer's reports that were approved back in May 24th. An average parcel in this district is assessed $41 per year total between districts number 1 and number 3. The city-owned parcels pay the same assessment rate as private parcels. The city pays $2,018 in the upcoming fiscal year. In addition, as required by Proposition 218, the city will pay $6,350 for services that have been deemed to be of general community benefit. I think that in general recaps the lighting districts. Be glad to answer any questions as well.
Okay. Any questions?
I do.
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem.
Two quick questions. One, a constituent concern. When a light's out, who do they call?
I know they're set up, but I'm not going to go ahead. Someone just called me yesterday.
They asked me that question in response to this agenda item.
And, it used to be we kind of had a special number, but nowadays even we are funneled into the SC is a great website. So if you just Google or whatever your search mechanism is, SCE outage, streetlight outage, it takes you very quickly to this location, and you just put in your address, and if it's an outage or flickering, whatever the situation is. And it's pretty slick. They send you an email right back saying they've recorded your issue, and then when it's completed, they also tell you when it's done. So it's actually better than the old system where you used to phone it in, might have to check in if it was actually done or not. And they're pretty responsive as well.
And do you have information at your office ready to give to someone that calls out of the blue, saying, the street light's out, who do I call? That you have someone that can give them that immediately and
Yeah,
tell them that immediately?
Some people like to do it themselves, but we're also willing to do that.
Because after all, it's our district.
Yeah, and so if people call and, because these are, keep in mind, SC owns streetlights. The city does not own most of the streetlights,
Right.
but still, we're willing to either, call, whatever, I guess you call it, submit the request ourselves, or some people prefer to do it themselves. We give them the website.
Thanks for segueing to my next question. You know what's coming. I already talked to you about this. These districts, the cities can either own the poles or not. There's been court cases on this. I think Victorville went to the Public Utilities Commission after a court case, and basically they said, because SCE didn't want to, they were frustrated with the lack of maintenance. They were frustrated with not wanting to change to LEDs, et cetera, and they say, we want to buy these back and modernize them, and the SEC said no, and now there's rules saying you've got to give cities that option. Also, cities are doing things with those poles, like distributed internet systems that, are changing the character of this whole situation. We can own them if we want to. We've let them go in the past. I guess we used to own them and gave them to Edison and put it on a different rate schedule, or did we never own them?
I don't think we ever owned these, yeah.
Okay.
The majority.
But I just want to make it clear for the record that the times, they may be changing, and we may need to evaluate this, and there is a path to reacquiring control of these if we wish, where we go on a different rate schedule, as I understand it, with Edison, where we just pay them the no metering charge. But then we can control things like, you know what, let's do better compliance with our night sky ordinance, and let's get some LEDs in, and maybe let's do some other things with these poles. I'm not asking for any action on that, but is anything I said incorrect in terms of our options?
I think that the option for LED lighting is the one that looks the most promising.
And the problem with SCE is you go to them and they have no incentive for doing that.
I think there's a new tariff they've just announced it's going through the assembly right now. I think it's already gone through the assembly and it's gone to the PUC for approval.
Right, because as of now, they just charge the same. And the city is charged the same, and then they charge an arm and a leg to switch out the LED, probably a lot more than you could do it internally if you own the pole.
The previous tariff was ridiculous. If you want to switch to LED, it was huge. But the new tariff will actually be a decrease in the monthly fee, and they'll switch to LED, and it's a very reasonable.
And the fee for change out
and there's going to be such a rush. Every city's going to want to do it. And SC seems to be very aware of our dark sky ordinance and has worked with the city previously on some of these issues and the Green Coalition. And they have us as a great prototype city to do up front. So if the council's willing to do that, I'll bring that back to them once the tariff is
I'd like to
announced.
see that personally. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilman Haney.
Greg, I don't want to pit zones against zones, but there's 12 zones. Is there any accountability for the monies that are collected from each zone, and then how much maintenance is actually performed in those zones? That would be one question. And then the other question is, any surplus funding that we have, is there any way that we could earmark sidewalks for repairs?
We've just come to a situation now where we have a surplus developing. So at this point, yes, we can go through and start doing the curb gutter and sidewalk and landscaping repairs that were intended as part of District 3. So we'll be able to start implementing those more. And we've done some of that in the past. We'll be able to do substantially more of that in the future. And then secondly, the accountability per district, that's factored in. It's basically how many streetlights are in each district. So it's really a prorated fee that goes out to the districts, but it's a point we'll take when it comes to, when we delve more into the curb, gutter, sidewalk, and landscaping, that we make sure we prorate those improvements according to the
That was just a question. Thank you. Also, I remember years ago, the city of Santa Monica had a joint venture on sidewalk and curb and gutter repair, where if a group of people in a neighborhood had a lot of uplifting of their sidewalks, that the city would partner with them when they reduced the permitting, to, if the homeowner paid for the removal and the setup, that the city actually provided the concrete. So there's other ways of approaching the repairs that we have in the city regarding sidewalks. I just see a lot of sidewalks, and I'd hate for us to become the second city or the sister city of Los Angeles and their problems. I think if we acknowledge that we have a problem early on and that we figure out how to deal with it, even if it's a small percentage of these budgeted items, it's just going to benefit us.
I think surprisingly, our sidewalk trip hazards are in great shape. Over the past 5 years, we've implemented a program for sidewalk trip hazard removal. So we just cycled through the city once, and we're going through a second time for each one of those areas now. So we're doing pretty well. We're within the bounds of what the JPIA is recommending. So some areas are always hot. Certain areas, certain trees really lift those sidewalks, and we usually get a call from a complaint, and we make sure we address those more quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Grant? Yes, Mr. McClary.
Just a quick statement, and by no means am I looking or trying to take credit for this, but I just want to point out for the benefit of the public and the council that for a number of years we struggled with deficits in both of these funds, both the Arcade Plaza maintenance and the landscape and lighting district, and now we've been able to move or erase that deficit, and we now actually have a small surplus in each fund. So thanking to Mr. Grant for his efforts on that, and just want to let people know that we're not quite like those folks in Washington. We do try to address these things going forward. So, but I think it's good news, and it means that the districts are looking healthy.
All right, thank you, Mr. McClary. This is a public hearing. I'll open it up to the public. Does anybody have any comments with regard to this agenda item? No? Then I will close the public hearing, bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion.
Move approval.
Any further discussion? No? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, moving on to our discussion items. I'm going to take up the item number 9 first, because it's going to be hopefully a rather quick item. And that is the appointment to fill an unexpired term of the city clerk. Mr. McClary, do you have any preamble to that?
No.
Okay.
No, Mr. Mayor.
Well, then let me kind of give a little preamble. Rhonda Besor, who had been our city clerk, retired, and this is an elected position, so at the time that she resigned, the council has two choices. One is to appoint an interim city clerk that would then be responsible for acting as city clerk until the November election, at which time, if that person chose to run for election as the permanent city clerk, he or she could do so. Or we could call for a special election now and have a city clerk elected. The decision for that is principally up to the mayor with the ratification of the council. And as a special election costs the citizens of Ojai in the neighborhood of $30,000 to $35,000. And given the fact that it's already June and the general election is this year, I did not believe that it was in our best interest to spend the money to have a special election only to have the election again in November. So we published in the newspaper for applications. We received applications, and Councilman Lara and I interviewed the applicants. And we're bringing back tonight for our recommendation and requesting the council approve Cynthia Burrell as our interim city clerk. Ms. Burrell was the city's city clerk for many, many years, close to 20 years, as I recall, and had retired. And she's decided that she wishes to come back and serve as the city clerk. I'll also point out that in the past, we have had the city clerk function as our records manager as well. And when you do that, then you've got a city clerk that receives a salary from the city of $350 per month, and then is paid a salary by the city as the records manager. Well, we elected not to combine those two this time and only have a pure city clerk. So what we're looking at in terms of this is an individual that is going to be part-time, operating in the functions of the city clerk and being paid $350 per month. In conjunction with that, the records manager, who was recently hired, will act as a deputy city clerk. So we'll be able to act on certain things at the direction of the city clerk. So that's our recommendation is for Cynthia Burrell. Mr. McClary, do you have any comments with regard to Ms. Burrell?
No, I don't, other than that I have had the pleasure of working with her in the past. She did have a short stint, I want to say about 5 years ago, where she served in a similar role before Ms. Basor came on board. I had a very good experience working with her before, and I know she's a very qualified individual, as were the other persons who applied as well.
Okay, Councilman Lara?
You did an excellent job, other than thanking the other two applicants. I think they were qualified and had many strengths. But Cynthia Burrell, she is awesome. She has this great energy about her, and she's
very knowledgeable.
Very knowledgeable. I learned so much from that interview, just talking to her. But I also want to thank the other applicants because they did a great job too.
And we appreciate them taking the time to interview, and certainly they were qualified as well. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we appoint Cynthia Burrell as our interim city clerk.
Second.
Any discussion by the council?
Quick discussion.
Yes.
Do we have an office for her?
We could work that out with her. We could make space available.
Okay. I know we're short.
Yes, we are short, so
Okay.
I can work this out with Ms. Burrell.
But we've got a space that.
We can make a
be
space,
hers.
yes,
City
sure.
clerk needs her space.
We will work that out with her. If she needs a space, we will make a space for her.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Yeah, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, thank you. Now let's go back on the order that we have in the agenda, and we'll take up item number 5, which is Ventura County Transportation Commission, Ventura County Local Transportation Authority, VCTC Transportation Measure, Investment Expenditure Plan. Mr. McClary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is before you at the request of the Ventura County Transportation Commission. The commission is working to get approval to put a measure on the November ballot for a Ventura County local transportation tax. The tax would generate significant funds to not only support major projects such as the widening and improvements for Highway 101 and 23. The proposal would also look to allocate about 50% of the money from the sales tax to go directly back to the cities for their local road maintenance. For the city of Ojai, we would be looking at about $500,000 a year, which is rather significant for us. We've been putting about $1 million a year or so into the streets annually to try to get caught up. And of course, we are still looking at a deficit there. So that would be very beneficial to the city of Ojai. As I understand it, that the law requires at least 6 of the Ventura County cities representing no less than 50% plus 1 of the incorporated population, in addition to the Board of Supervisors, to approve the plan before the commission can request the measure be placed on the ballot. Mr. Darren Kettle, the Executive Director of the VCTC, is here this evening, and I think he's looking to just make a very brief presentation and see if the council has any questions about the tax measure or about this particular item. Just want to note that the council is not being asked to endorse the tax measure per se, simply whether or not to approve putting it on the ballot.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Kettle.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Pleasure to be before you. You have heard plenty from me in the past, so I am not going to take any more of your time this evening. We are, as your staff, as Mr. McClary indicated, the nature of our process. So we are now doing the tour of Ventura County to meet with all the city councils, requesting the resolution of support of the investment plan itself. I'm certainly happy to respond to any questions. There are some modifications in the final plan from where the proposal was when we first brought it to you several months ago when I did the presentation. A few tweaks around the edges, but generally speaking, pretty much what you saw back then. I've also had the privilege to present to both you, Mayor, in your capacity at Gold Coast, and Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick at the Economic Development Collaborative of Ventura County. So you both have seen the most recent presentation as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Kettle?
Mayor Blatz, I just want to comment. I said I just joined a commission. A council member, Clapp, was on the commission prior to me, and so I came in during the late stages of this plan. And I just want to share with you the participation level of all the commissioners, meaning the elected officials from the county supervisors and from the other cities, how involved they've been in this process, how vocal they have been, and the support that they all have for this tax measure. It would mean a lot to the county, and also to Mr. Kittle and his staff. They've been excellent in providing us data, information, research, going out there trying to make sure that we do our homework prior to having this even on the ballot. So I appreciate his reaching out to us and his willingness to work with all of us in all the cities.
Thank you.
I have one comment, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, I appreciate this, and I understand the importance of transportation. I look forward to the same effort being put forth through the county regarding water. And I know that that's not under your purview, but transportation's great, but we're not going to have anything to transport unless we have water.
Infrastructure needs throughout this county are massive, and I get to deal in transportation, but we're not the only area, no doubt.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just a comment?
Yeah.
Really, a couple comments. One, I absolutely think this is one of the reasons I'm so excited about seeing this on the ballot, for the option to be there for the voters, which is all we're being asked to do, really, is I'm just going to read from page, on 5-3, on page 3 of 4. The comprehensive transportation must support all modes, including bicycle and walking. It's anticipated that with local funds used consistent with complete streets ordinances, this program will enable local jurisdictions to make transformative investments in bicycle and pedestrian projects. And I just want to say for the public and for the record that we are closing in on updating our master plan, which I hope will be incorporated as a general plan update. That's my personal preference, in terms of bicycle and other and pedestrian transport. And this timing couldn't be better in terms of our maybe being able to take advantage of this and making some very significant improvements for the valley in terms of bicycle transport. So I think the timing couldn't be better. And then the next thing I'm going to mention, because I've already brought it up with you, I assume the plan is subject, it's a dynamic plan, right? We're approving the plan in general. I just will raise the issue once again. I think there's an ongoing debate that needs to be made, especially if the voters want to go for this in principle, and that is that HOV lanes have been predicted. I know your models show that they would take care of the transportation needs, but I have, since our last meeting, where I've talked with you about it, I've looked up. The predictive power of those models is sort of terrible. There's been many models saying HOVs will handle our needs on the freeways, and the models don't get to the time periods that they say they're going to. And that's why I'll just say again, for the record, I think the VCTC needs to take a very careful look at the managed lane option as we move forward in terms of what seems to be the trend in highway design right now. That's all my only comment.
And Mayor, just in a quick response, it is a 30-year plan, and anything that you put together for 30 years, you better have opportunities to look back into it, because 30 years is a long time.
Right.
And the commission has done some work in researching managed lanes, and it may be a wave of the future. The data doesn't support it yet, but that doesn't mean that the data is not going to be wrong or right 10 years from now. And
as long as we're open to it.
That's exactly the case. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a discussion item, and I do have one item, I do have one speaker's card. Scott Eicher.
Most of what I was going to say has been addressed by the conversation up here already, but the Chamber Board does support this tax increase. We need the extra funds. We've been leaving millions of dollars in federal matching dollars and others on the table that we've not been able to use. And if the city of Ojai can get a 50% boost in the dollars toward fixing their streets and other infrastructure in this town, so be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody else wishing to comment on this? No? All right, I'll bring it back to council.
I'm ready to make a motion if there's no comments or.
I just want to make one comment that I do sit on the board of Gold Coast Transit, and that board unanimously adopted the same motion that we're asked to adopt tonight. Go ahead.
And I'm ready to make a motion, but I just want to let the public know that I would encourage you to read this plan. It's a comprehensive plan, and it really does cover a lot of things, even environmental issues. They've done a fantastic job working with different agencies to make sure that we cover every aspect of the environment and any other issue that could potentially arise. I would encourage the public to read it. I'll then make a motion to adopt resolution number 16 dash, do we know the number, Ms. Young?
No, I do not,
No,
Councilmember
okay.
Lara.
Say approving the Ventura County Transportation Measure Investment/Expenditure Plan and direct the city manager to transmit the adopted resolution to VCTC acting as the Ventura County Local Transportation Authority.
I'll second that, and thank you, sir, for being willing to come to all these meetings.
You've had quite a time. Yeah. All right, any further discussion? No, hearing none? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, moving into our next discussion item and trying to manage this a little bit. I'm trying to take care of some items that may not be of particular length. So I'd like to skip now to item number 7, which is the Libby Bowl use fee waiver by the Ojai Film Society Summer Film Series. Mr. McClary?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I appeared before the board approximately 10 weeks ago, and at the time I had asked the council for a nonprofit fee waiver for 8 dates that I had placed a deposit on at the Libby Bowl. The bowl voted 3-2 against my request. I was encouraged at that time to release a number of these dates. In consideration, the council informed me that they would reconsider my request. So several days after the last meeting, I released 6 of the 8 dates to the city. And I'm back here requesting waiver for 2 remaining dates.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. McClary, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't think staff has anything further to add. Ms. Young, anything that we need to add? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions of the applicant? No? Thank you. This is a discussion item. Is there any members of the public that wish to address us? I don't have any speakers cards. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion or a motion.
Well, in light of the fact that we had a lot of discussion on this, the gentleman responded precisely to our direction.
Mm-hmm.
And given the importance of the Film Society in our community and the situation with the Ojai Playhouse, I'm going to make a motion to approve this resolution.
I'm going to second that.
This waiver, excuse me, approve the waiver.
Any further discussion? No? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to throw out to the council. We've got 3 more items in our discussion items that all could be rather lengthy. I'm asking if the council has any preference on the order in which these items are taken.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we next handle item number 8, because I think it actually could be pretty short.
Okay.
In light of Mayor Clapp's absence, I mean, not Mayor, former Councilperson Clapp's absence, your possible absence on the 28th.
Yes.
And I think the intent and good practice of having us all present when this is discussed fully, that perhaps we did get a short report from the city manager on the state of enforcement and then continue this item.
Okay.
Is what I would prefer. And,
Okay. Any objections
and then
to
see if
doing
there's
that?
any public comment on the matter.
Okay. All right. Then we're going to take up item number 8 on the discussion agenda. This is short-term vacation rentals prohibition enforcement. Mr. McClary?
So would you Would you like the full staff report, or would you just like the
No.
report at this point?
Just a short enforcement
Okay.
status report, and then we're not going to take up the full staff report until we're all.
My anticipation would be that we would have a brief discussion, take public input tonight. If I am, and again, if I'm absent, which I anticipate being absent on the 28th, take it up again when Councilwoman Clapp is here. And then, more than likely, at the first meeting in July, take it up for council action as to the enforcement. Is that consistent with your thoughts, Mayor Pro Tem Wyler?
Precisely.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you could just kind of give us a report as to where we are.
Apologize, I was looking for my memo here. Oh, here it is. There we go, just in time. So, well, let me cut to the chase. There's been quite a bit of history on this item. Picking up on May 24th, the City Council did take up this issue of the short-term rental enforcement, and at that point, the Council moved to confirm the existing direction of staff to begin enforcement on June 1st of the existing zoning codes. At that point, staff then began working with the city attorney to develop the options, some of which is in the staff report for this evening. And we've also began the preliminary work on the development of the letters and our outreach to begin contacting the ones, the properties that have been identified as short-term rentals. As of this date, we have identified 58 short-term rentals in the city that we suspect to be operating. We have sent 46 letters to those, advising them that if they are doing this activity, that they need to cease that. We have another 9 that we are going to be sending letters out as soon as we can. I did give direction to our code enforcement staff to make this their top priority for enforcement outside of any issues that are immediate health and safety concerns, so we've moved that to the top of the list. We also met recently with a citizen who had put together an extensive report on research on suspected short-term rentals within the city, and we did take that information and we are vetting that as part of the enforcement process. That is it in a very short and sweet nutshell in terms of what we're doing right now.
And
Right.
Mr. Mayor, if I could
Yes.
add perhaps 3 more words on that. In addition to the items that Interim City Manager McClary noted, I have worked with Interim City Manager McClary and the Code Compliance Officer to develop draft templates for the administrative citation for unlawful vacation rentals, the original warning letter, a further letter demanding those rentals that we don't have evidence of a rented night after June 1st, but we have their evidence of their ad being up to cease and desist from advertising. And we are looking at the options listed in the staff report. In addition, since the staff report was drafted 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I've also developed an idea for discussion with the council, perhaps tonight or the next time, that you could amend the municipal code to ban the activity of advertising a short-term rental as part of your regulation of the action of short-term rentals, keeping in mind that there are legal short-term rentals in the city, the hotels, the motels, the bed and breakfasts. You wouldn't be regulating their advertisements. Rather, you'd be regulating or prohibiting advertisements for unlawful short-term rentals. That would be a bit of a step up from where we are right now, which is only prohibiting the land use, but it would enable an additional tool in your quiver of tools to consider, and that was developed after the staff report was written.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask something? Matthew,
Yes.
who's presently doing that?
Pardon me?
What cities are presently doing that?
San Francisco has looked at doing that, and I believe has implemented that with respect to some of the vacation rentals. San Francisco has a hybrid system. Some are allowed, some are banned. It depends on the lease terms of a particular tenant and on particular zones, and also on the status, whether it's hosted or unhosted, rent-controlled or not rent-controlled, tenant or owned. They have a fairly complex system reflecting San Francisco's unique characteristics.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer?
Just amplifying on that, do you have any knowledge of whether that kind of thing is going on in Santa Barbara, Laguna Beach, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach. Those are just some of the cities that are also strictly regulating or eliminating short-term rentals for residential purposes in residential zones. Any of those cities have experience with that? Do you know?
To my knowledge, the beach cities have not banned the active advertising. Some of them are going after the advertisers, relying on the fact that they're soliciting the underlying land use. I know also that Malibu and I believe Santa Monica as well are pushing to have the hosting companies, Airbnb, VRBO, et cetera, pull the ads off. It's just varying success.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll additionally note that Sacramento, for the last 2 years, has considered a bill that would require the hosting companies to drop off ads from their sites that aren't legal under that city's rules or that county's rules. That bill did not go anywhere last year or the year before. So far, it's resting this year. The council may consider pushing their legislators to move that bill along.
Okay. Are there any comments on whether or not we want that to be included in an option for a future staff report?
I'd like to see the option. I don't want to discuss it any further right now.
Okay, all right. I have a question for Mr. Summers. There's, in the staff report, under recommendations, it's asking for us to provide direction, and it has an item. I'm not suggesting we're going to give direction tonight, but I have a question on it. And my question is this. A lot of zoning violations, zoning regulation violations are administrative in nature through fines and fees and penalties and that kind of thing. However, in this case, I think this recommendation is to provide some sort of direction as to whether we want to change it from a fine and penalty type of a regulation where we're simply fining people for doing it, to actually making it part of the municipal code under a misdemeanor violation where somebody would be charged with a misdemeanor. Is that accurate?
There's a nuance. At the moment, any violation of the municipal code, including the zoning code, is a misdemeanor or an infraction, depending on the level of the violation,
Okay.
and is also subject to civil fines under the administrative citation process.
Okay.
And this the recommendation number 2 on page 8-1 would be to increase the fine amount presently in the code for a misdemeanor to $1,000 from the current $500, which would apply to all violations of the code that constitute misdemeanors, including but not limited to vacation rentals.
Okay.
But it wouldn't transfer the status of vacation rental violations from civil to criminal. At present, they are both.
Okay.
Although, as to date, the city has not prosecuted anyone criminally for violating the short-term rental prohibition.
Okay, and the prosecutorial arm would be through our city attorney, or would it be through the DA's office?
The prosecutorial arm on this particular violation would be through the city attorney's office, acting as a city prosecutor.
Okay, gotcha.
So I have one question
Yes.
there. Is, you said it can either be a misdemeanor or it's an infraction. Explain the difference and how you make that determination as to what one is and what one isn't. And then I just wanted to add one other thing on a side note is, instead of 58 of these citations, I think we need to make it 57, because my neighbor across the street from me received one of these cease and desist orders, and she is not an owner of a vacation rental, nor has she ever used her house as a vacation rental. And I think I've said this a number of times, the house next to her on the corner of Pleasant and Daly is the vacation rental. Okay, so having said that, she just asked me to bring that up. She didn't quite know what to do with that letter.
I would,
if anyone in the city receives one of those and isn't providing any of those illegal services, what should they do with their letter?
I would recommend that they send a letter back to the code compliance officer indicating that they are not the vacation rental or a vacation rental.
Okay.
And that they sign it.
So then I'd still like to understand the difference between a misdemeanor and an infraction in this.
In this context,
how we're making these determinations.
Certainly. A violation of the code is set by the council when they adopt an item as either a misdemeanor or an infraction. The resolution that was adopted back in January defined unlawful short-term rentals as a misdemeanor subject to the current maximum $500 fine. Other violations are designated elsewhere in the code as infractions. And the difference there is the fine amount. An infraction is subject to a graduated series of fines, 50 for the first, 100 for the second, and 250 for the third.
Right.
Misdemeanor is subject to 500 total. Also, an infraction is only subject to fines if criminally prosecuted. A misdemeanor could result in up to 6 months in jail if, of course, convicted by a trial by jury.
Okay. So, so we already made this a misdemeanor.
Correct.
And you're asking us to come back and increase the fine from $500 to $1,000.
I'm recommending that the council consider that.
And you're basing that recommendation on what?
The request by the council at the last meeting to evaluate ways to increase the maximum fine amount.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mayor Blatz, I do have a couple questions. I just want to understand the recommendations in terms of what's being asked. So we're not only asked to increase the fine to 1,000 for citations, for administrative citation, but my understanding also is using misdemeanors as a last resort to get people to comply with this. Is that correct?
Yeah, the recommendation would be to increase the max fine for misdemeanors to 1,000, which is also the maximum fine for administrative citations.
So you're using
one is tied to the other, but we wouldn't expect to prosecute anybody as the first tool.
Yes.
Criminal prosecutions would be the last tool, and it may be challenging to convince a judge that a short-term rental is sufficiently important to warrant jail time. That may be quite challenging. Perhaps more effective as a last resort would be a civil injunction.
And that $1,000 fine, would you apply that fine on the fourth notice, or
if the
fifth or sixth? Like where are you looking to?
The recommendation would be to use the $1,000 fine in the first instance.
In the first instance.
In the first administrative citation issued after the fine is increased. It is high, but it would be an effective deterrent. $1,000 or $2,000 fines, and most of the rentals that the city has presently seen on its list are being rented at amounts far below that, somewhere between $300 and $500 a night. A $1,000 fine would wipe out the profits times 2, which would be an effective deterrent.
But
if the council wanted to,
but under the staff report on their bullet, the second bullet on 8-2, you state that a fine for an infraction violation may not exceed $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second violation of the same ordinance within 1 year, and $500 for the third and any subsequent violation of the same ordinance within 1 year. So are
that is for infractions?
It's for those for infractions,
right?
For under the administrative citations
and under the government code. In other words, the section that you're reading is the maximum fines the city can impose under the government code. For an infraction is 100, 200, and 500, and then for misdemeanors is 500. Because the council has already designated unlawful short-term rentals as a misdemeanor, our max fine under the current code is 500, but under the state government code, you could go up to 1,000. The key point, 2 key points to bear in mind in that. One is the decision point: do you want to increase the max fine to 1,000 from 500? And 2 is just the be aware point for both the council and the public that the city cannot go higher than $1,000 per violation. We don't have the power to fine 10 or 50 or 100,000, and that's Sacramento.
Councilman Lara and my colleagues, I think we're kind of bumping into a level of detail that I was hoping that we would defer until we're all here, on this at this point. I think we're kind of getting into a level of detail. It'd be better if we were all present to discuss. That's just my personal feeling.
I have no problem.
I would agree, although I do have one more question. Who is the arresting agency for the misdemeanors at the Sheriff's Department?
It would be the Sheriff's Department, yeah.
Okay. That's my last question.
I just had one last question too, is on the mailings, are they certified?
The recommendation from me to staff has been to send both certified mail return receipt requested and a second copy by U.S. mail. And the reason I recommend that is from my days at the Coastal Commission. Certain recalcitrant property owners won't open the certified mail copy, but they will open the U.S. mail copy. They'll call and complain about the U.S. mail copy, indicating that they got the other one too.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address us? I mean, a discussion item. Is there anyone in the audience? No? Yes, Mr. Quillisi.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As I understand it, the recommendation here is to increase the maximum fine for a misdemeanor from 500 to 1,000. Is that for every misdemeanor listed in the Ojai Municipal Code, or is each supposed to be further delineated in the fine and fee schedule? And so it could be 1,000 for this, and it might be 500 for something else, and it might be 200 for something else. And I think, but I'm asking for clarification on that. And also, if the city attorney could give us some examples, and a couple would be fine, I think, of other parts of the municipal code where violation is a misdemeanor. If, in fact, everything goes to the max on a misdemeanor, you might want to consider whether or not some of the other areas of the municipal code that are deemed misdemeanors are worthy of a $1,000 fine if it's automatic. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Summers?
Certainly. The recommendation would be to increase the max fine to 1,000, which would be for all misdemeanors, unless the council so specifies otherwise. Many of them would have been set at the max, so they'd go up to 1,000. Others may have been set lower. They would stay lower. And it might make sense to look at the others as part of a perhaps fine and fee schedule overview of the complete fine and fee schedule. In terms of other misdemeanors, I don't have a lot off the top of my head, but an example would be drinking in the arcade can be prosecuted as either an infraction or a misdemeanor, or camping without a permit in Libby Park can be prosecuted as a misdemeanor or, in fact, is a misdemeanor.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the public wishing to add anything?
I just want to say that this is very...
Come forward and so that people in the audience.
Hi, I'm Alan Thornhill. I live here in town. I don't have anything to add, but I just want to say that that was not real clear to me anyway, what was being talked about. So any kind of decision to be made on this, I'm on my behalf anyway, I need to hear a little more about it. There was a lot said, and anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alan, this will be discussed again on the 28th. And then it'll be discussed again at our first meeting in July.
But while I am up here, I did have one thought, and if we could just go back for just a second, why would it not be advisable to enforce prohibiting advertising for something illegal in the Ojai Valley? If it is illegal, if it were to become illegal in the Ojai Valley, what would be any benefit to not allowing people to go ahead and advertise for it anyway, even though it's illegal? Why would it not make sense to just, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Okay. So
Like,
it's kind of rhetorical what you're advising us that you think we should make it illegal.
well, it just kind of would fall into the same line of it being not necessarily illegal for anybody to say, I am conducting this thing in the Ojai Valley, it's completely illegal, but I'm advertising it in the LA Times or on television or whatever. But it's something that's the Ojai City has deemed as illegal.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Yes, come forward, please.
Good evening. I'm Vicki Byrne. I live in the city. I think probably not too many people have done as much research as I have on the short-term rentals and where they are and whether they're operating or not. And I would recommend that you do make it illegal if you can to advertise, because the cost and the efforts that need to go into enforcement, if you don't have that tool in your toolbox, are outrageous. You're going to be spending a lot of money to enforce this if you don't have the ability to say, well, it's illegal to advertise. Basically, you can let your fingers do the walking and send out a citation or follow up with that. Otherwise, you've got to identify where these things are. And as you know, I'm sure most of you know that VRBO and Airbnb are not cooperative, to say the least. And they're not going to help you at all. And you're going to spend a lot of money if you can, it's illegal. Why would advertising it be legal if actually renting is not legal? Then why would advertising be legal? So anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else? No? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Any further discussion, or should we move on?
I do have a suggestion.
Okay.
I'm trying to respect the direction of the council in terms of not getting into the weeds. Just a suggestion in terms of when possibly drafting this so it could be better understood is making a table, kind of explaining what misdemeanor infractions are, and then, for example, you have there the real estate brokerage. Where does that fall in the whole enforcement tools? Is that just another option of marketing this and making people aware, just so that the public could understand how what these tools are and how they could be applied and when they will be applied? So, just a suggestion.
Okay. Will do. Any other suggestions? No? Okay. Then this item is going to be continued for further discussion on the agenda for June the 28th, 2016, at the regular city council meeting that night. All right, moving on to, does anybody have a particular desire to take up item number 10 first before 6? No?
I think 6 is going to go fairly quick.
Okay. Then let's take up item number 6, which is the roles and responsibility of city commissions and boards. Mr. McClary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll give a brief report on the current roles and responsibilities and compositions of the city's boards and commissions, and then we're requesting that the council discuss the current role structure, protocols, and responsibilities of the city's boards and commissions, and give further direction to staff as desired. Currently, the city has in existence and operating, we have the Arts Commission, which has 7 members. They're responsible for the city's public art program and also advisory on the public art ordinance. And of course, they do a lot of other things to promote the arts as well. Building Appeals Board is a 5-member board. They hear building appeals and other matters as directed by council. We have our 7-member Historic Preservation Commission. They evaluate inventory and advise on historic and cultural matters. We have our Park and Recreation Commission, also 7 members. They advise the council on matters involving, quite obviously, Parks and Recreation, a very active group. Planning Commission, 7 members. They meet twice a month. They're responsible for development and planning for future development within the city. And they have some particular duties under law as well. Attached to the staff report, I did include the sections from the municipal code which outline the duties of the boards and the commissions. Should be noted that the boards and commissions are generally advisory in nature, although they do have some independent powers as granted by the city council or through the municipal code. And lastly, I did also want to mention that would be remiss if I did not note that within the municipal code there does exist right now a youth commission, which to my knowledge, and I've not had the chance to do any research on it, but I know in my 7.5 years that I've been here, we have never had a youth commission, so I'm not sure if we did or what the history was on that. But staff is looking for some direction right now, if that's something that the council wants to resurrect, or if it's some direction to consider perhaps repealing it going forward, or at least give some direction to staff to keep the commission inactive until further direction or for any other further advisement. Simply don't want to be in conflict with the code and not pointing that out. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Mayor
Councilman Lara?
Plaza, I do have a suggestion. Also, keeping in mind how this item was brought to us, if I recall correctly, Councilmember Clapp was adamant about bringing this in front of us, and Councilmember Haney seconded it. I don't know if it'll be wise to also have a small discussion about this and then table until she has the opportunity to speak about her issues and what she specifically wanted to address on this item. Mine is, I just don't want to, I want to give her the opportunity to voice her opinion among all of us. So I don't know if that's the desire of the council or the
I
mayor.
would concur with that. Out of respect, maybe whatever we want to individually comment on, then we continue it until she's present, yeah. Okay. Or until we're all present.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I agree. I think
We're all present.
this really deserves the full council.
Yeah. I have a comment
Okay.
I'd like to make.
Yes.
Just to get it out there.
Okay.
Early and often, as they say. An idea that's been percolating around in my mind, and I'm not asking for any action tonight because we are continuing it, but I just want to state for the record that I have been thinking about efficiency in government. And to be really blunt about it, if 5 people work for council and the board, would be more efficient with 5 people on all the commissions. We're a small city, and I just wonder if we would see things work more efficiently that way. I just want to throw the idea out there. And then the second point I want to make is I think we ought to go ahead on the Youth Commission, go ahead and repeal it, because I think, frankly, it's better to have youth members, young people, part of the regular commissions and not set off in some separate thing. So I'd like to go in that direction. Those are just my thoughts.
Okay. Councilman Lara?
I really didn't have any thoughts on this item. I feel like almost every year that I've been on council, it's been brought up, and we talked about the members before, and we had a discussion about it. The only thing that I would suggest, if we're going to be talking about eliminating or reducing the amount of members from the commission, and not necessarily taking this item to the commission, but giving them an opportunity to write to us if they even have an opinion about reducing. I know it's our power to either expand or reduce it. It's our authority to do so. But I think it's always important to get at least their reaction, because what I recall is we had commissioners that were not happy when we brought this item before.
I know, and
I'm just suggesting that.
I agree.
Which
is why I said something tonight.
Yeah.
So they know everyone knows my thinking.
Yeah, and that's my only suggestion on that. In terms of the youth, I would love to see some history about that. I kind of feel that was developed when the Youth Foundation was coming. I never participated. I never was part of the Youth Commission, but not saying that I'm for it or against it. I know that staff is pretty limited, and they have their plates full, unless Mr. McClare wants to take it on under his department. But I would just be curious to see what it was before giving an opinion about whether to repeal it or not.
I think that's probably a smart idea. It's going to come back before, this agenda item is going to come back before us, probably if we have room for it on the first meeting in July. It might be, I think our second meeting in July has been canceled, but it's going to come back before us, and I think at that time, we all can review the municipal code and read what that youth commission was formed for. The item of taking the memberships down to 5 members was something that I was also going to bring up, because I've been giving a lot of thought to it, particularly with the issues of having to have 4 as a quorum rather than 3, and also giving some thought to some comments that Mr. Quillisi had made with regard to with our residency requirements on a commission, that potentially we could have a quorum of non-resident commissioners that could be making potentially an important decision affecting Ojai,
Yes.
with none of them living within the city.
Right.
So I kind of would like to really think about this. I am not adverse, but like Councilmember Lara, I think that we ought to open it up to at least getting a consensus from each commission through the chair, and then any other individual commissioners that wanted to provide us with information should feel free to do that. In me looking at it, I tend to think that 5 might be a better number than 7, just in general terms. If it's good for the council, and it's good for the BAB, and it's good for what used to be the redevelopment commission, I'm not sure that we need 7 members on the others. The one thing that I would want to make sure, though, is that if we do anything with Park and Recreation, that at least there be 5 members, and then a youth member might be in addition to that.
Right.
Or keep that at 7 with the youth member.
Right.
Because I think the youth is part of the 7, isn't it, now? Or is it in addition
It's
to
in
the
addition.
7?
No, they're one of the 7.
I'm just thinking about the seating.
Boy, had to think here
It's
for a
what?
minute.
It's part of the 7, that's what
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah.
It's part of
Really?
the
Yeah, so I really think that we ought to consider, I don't think we want to have that part of the 5, but that means if we have 6, we've got to go to 7, okay? So I'm thinking, as I'm thinking out loud, Park and Recreations maybe should stay at 7. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
I have 3 things I'd like to touch on quickly,
Yeah.
and that is, one of the issues that was before us was the ability for council to direct commissions to do additional work, not necessarily out of the scope of their purview, but to just receive direction from us and to investigate and then come back to council. So I know that was one of the issues, and I want to wait for Betsy before we have that discussion. The other thing that I have is, I think that we need to do, I know we do a commission orientation when someone's new, but I'd like to see us figure out how to implement some type of a commission handbook orientation on an annual basis, because I just sense that there's things in the handbook and guidelines that we might be expecting the chair of a commission to explain to new commissioners, and I think it should come from staff, and try to figure out how to do it on an annual basis, just to cover those. Like, one of the things I read here is, commissions may not direct staff to initiate major projects without approval from the city council, and yet there's times that HPC or planning or someone has directed staff to do something, whether it's a city employee or whether it's the city attorney. And we just need to clarify that that's not their purview to direct staff, and I'm not sure they understand that. So to me, that's one of those things that needs to be discussed, and they need to have some form of enlightenment on. And then, again, it said here, it should be noted that while generally considered advisory in nature, many commissions and board have quasi-independent powers. I think we need to make sure we clarify what those are and how they affect each commission. So when we do have this discussion further, those are some things that we'd like to touch on. Okay.
Okay.
There's one more thing that I want to add. It has been brought to my attention that in the handbook, it limits the chair to only be chair 1 year. And I guess I'm the liaison to the Arts Commission, so they want to have the ability to at least do it 2 years in a row, just because they feel like they're just getting their feet settled and understanding the whole process. So that's another option. And I absolutely like your idea about every year having a process where they could look at the handbook. I guess I like that idea.
Any other comments? Okay. Do we have a date certain when we want to continue this to, or do we just want to continue it to a future agenda a meeting, the agenda for a future meeting when all council members are expected to be present.
I believe the next date that would meet that criteria would be July 12th.
Okay, and is this going to fit on the July 12th agenda? I don't know what else we have on there at the present.
I'd have to take a look at this point, but we could take a look at that and see if there are some things we wanted to move around.
I would prefer it to be then.
Yeah,
If we
okay.
can.
Okay, understood.
All right. All right, then that matter is continued. This was a discussion item. Does anybody have any? Mr. Quillisi?
Thank you, Mayor Blatz and Council. Steve Quillisi, I'm a resident of the city. Just a couple of quick comments. If you are in a mind to reduce the Planning Commission from 7 to 5, it's a painless exercise right now because we have 2 vacancies. We still have the requirement in the code, though, that 4 is a quorum, and 4 out of 5 on a couple of particular projects is not possible right now because of recusals. So if you're going to change it, you've got to change it from 4 to 3 as a quorum, and I agree with Mayor Blatz. It's a good idea if we set it up so that any quorum is going to have a majority of city residents. Second, I just briefly glanced at the enabling portions of the code for each of the commissions, and they are not consistent in what the military calls ODA, other duties as assigned. And there should be consistent language, I think, in the enabling code provisions for each commission or board to say that if the city council wants you to do something, you go do it. Third, the 1 versus 2 year terms. I've been on the boards of 4 different nonprofits down in LA, still on the boards of 2 of them. And I can tell you that we have gradually changed over all 4 of the ones that I was involved with from 1-year presidencies to 2-year. Because as Councilmember Lara says, at the end of a year, you're starting to understand what your job is. And the second year, you perform pretty well. I don't think there's anything in the code that says you can't be reelected to a position.
Right.
But I think it might be better for the stability just to say 2-year terms, at least for the chair of a commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quillisi. Anyone else wishing to comment? Yes, Dale?
Dale Hansen, I still live in the city. I got in trouble last time I said this, but I'll say it again. I think that all the council and board members should live in the city. And unfortunate that one person that I think is wonderful on the Planning Commission does not live in the city, but nevertheless, I think since they carry the weight that they do, they should live in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. And that can be the topic of a future discussion as well. Anyone else wanting to comment on this? No? Then I will bring it back. And I do think that we should maybe look at 2 years versus 1. Anything is open to discussion. And I do agree that we probably should have a catch-all, as was suggested by Mr. Quillisi, that says, or any other duties as assigned by the council.
You mean ODA?
ODA, yeah, I wasn't familiar with that, but yeah, we're going to have ODA. Okay. All right.
Implement
then,
our
not hearing any objections, we're going to continue this to the July 12th meeting, unless that July 12th meeting is, the agenda is so full that we don't believe we can give it accurate time.
I would consult with the mayor before
Yes.
we made that decision.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 10, request for services, Ventura County Sheriff. Mr. McCleary. And the sheriff isn't here tonight. But welcome, it's nice to have you here. He's no dummy, right?
We know he sent his trusted deputy.
That's right. Mr. McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have this on. The contract actually states that the cities are to submit a request for services to the Ventura County Sheriff and preceding each fiscal year for the services recommended in the upcoming fiscal year. So we have put this on the agenda at the request of council, so that opportunity for council to discuss this. and determine what request they would like to submit to the sheriff for a request for services.
All right. Does the council have any questions for Mr. McCleary?
Unfortunately, I do.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
It's only 9, so. Just a couple real quick. Number one is that I think we have identified that we have an issue with the lease for the facility, that we are going to have to perhaps act on an updated lease at some point and see if county agrees to that. Am I correct in that, given that the lease that we have expired in 1985, there's no renewal and provision in the lease, and we're still looking, but it may be that we need to formally proceed with that at some point. I don't have any particular issues with the lease, but as a formality, we ought to have a valid lease.
Understood, and I apologize, this came up fairly recently. We haven't had a chance to look into it a little bit further. I don't know if there is in fact an amended lease or was an amended lease. Obviously, we need to know if we have one that is still in existence.
Right.
Obviously, your points are correct. If we have an expired lease, then we need to address that as soon as possible. So we will do that research, and we will advise you as soon as we can, but certainly we can have that information prior to the next meeting for certain.
Okay, thank you. Another question I have is in the minimum level of service, it has the 1/2 dispatcher / office assistant Tina. And it says 1/2 is included in the general law enforcement services. How does that interact with the budget, the way we handle the budget? I believe that's the salaries and benefit in the police department is for Tina?
Correct.
For that position?
Correct. We have
that's a full-time funding?
That's right.
So how does 1/2 get put into the amount being for the line item for the contract services and also for the full-time in the separate budget position?
Well, I understand the question. I'm at a loss for an immediate answer. I understand.
Oh, okay, he's popped
Mr.
up.
Livingston,
Mr.
thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank James Hahn for getting me set up so I can watch this in my office while I'm doing other work. So the way that works is that we pay 100% of the salary for that person. Then the sheriff's department reimburses us 50% of that salary, but that comes in as a revenue item.
Okay.
And as a general government, we show things broad and gross rather than netting them out. So that's how that works. So we actually have a reimbursement from the sheriff's department for those services.
I didn't catch that, so thank you.
Yeah.
I just saw the discrepancy there.
Yeah. So it's a great question, actually.
Okay, and then parenthetically to that, does that make that position actually since we're paying for the position, even though we're reimbursed for it, does that technically make that person answerable directly to the city manager as opposed to the chief of police?
Well, it's a shared responsibility because
The reason I'm asking is it's technically not a sheriff's position.
correct, but because she's doing a lot of functions for the sheriff's department, then they are picking that up. So she's, if I'm not mistaken, she does dispatch services and other things, general office work and everything. So it's a dual responsibility. I think primarily, is she reporting to the sheriff's department? I don't know, Ms. McClure.
Yeah, the supervisor for this position would be the police captain.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe that's the way it was established at the beginning.
Councilman Wyrick, can I interject something? On the PERS side of it?
Yes.
Who is accountable for the benefit package for her?
We're accountable for the benefit package, but then, once again, we get some reimbursement for the cost of that position.
50%?
Yeah. I'll have to double check, but it should be all of that. My understanding is it's all of that, but I'll double check that.
Okay.
And the reason I ask is that the contract defines the sheriff's personnel in the chain of command for contract services. This is outside that contract. So I was trying to be clear exactly what the chain of command is in terms of that particular position.
I mean, we're essentially, leasing that position part-time to the sheriff's department, because we are paying the full cost and then getting reimbursed. So, yeah, that's a good differentiation there.
And another question, just, thank you for being here, everybody, to answer these questions. It says 1/2 chief of police in the minimum level of service.
Okay.
And it's really a question for Mr. Summers, believe it or not. The statutory requirement for the general law city is to have a full-time chief of police, I believe.
Not exactly. The city does have the power to contract that out and not have a chief of police, period. Or in this case, have it by contract through the sheriffs.
Okay, and it can be part-time?
Yeah.
The chief of police position?
It can be part-time.
Okay, I thought the function of chief of police was required for a general law city.
No, the city can contract it out entirely.
Well, I mean, I know
Maybe
you
I'm
can
missing the
contract it
question.
out, I mean, the function has to be there. The function, you can actually not have a chief of police in a general law city?
Oh, no, you have to have a person who is the chief of police, but it's not required to be a full-time position.
It does not require to be
And it
full-time.
isn't required to be a city employee.
I know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering about the full-time aspect.
No, it doesn't have to be full-time.
So what does one-half mean?
That might be better directed to the lieutenant or Mr. Livingston.
I could take a shot at that.
Mr. McClary.
It's because most of the station personnel are split in terms of the duties that the work that they do within the city.
Oh, he has other duties.
And the work that they do in the unincorporated area.
Okay.
Because this station has, the patrol area covers not only the city of Ojai, but it includes the unincorporated areas of the Ojai Valley, going out, probably, how far does the station go? Probably towards Santa Paula, out toward Lake Casitas.
It goes all the way to the Santa Barbara County line.
You go all the way up 33 to the Santa Barbara line.
Yes, up to
Yeah.
Rose Valley.
Yeah.
And going to, I'm sorry. Going east on Ojai Santa Paula Road, our jurisdiction ends at the Hilltop
Right.
Burger Stand, right there, just west of St. Thomas Aquinas.
Thank you. So it's more of a funding allocation
Correct.
than another, okay.
And that's primarily, my understanding is that's primarily the reason why we have the arrangement for Tina's services, because, half of that was for the Ojai PD, and then half of that is for the outside.
Unincorporated area as a whole. Okay. Interesting hybrid.
Yeah, it's.
You know. And then I'm almost done, and I just want to point out something I've brought up before privately, but I want to say it for the record. I have an archive of every single contract for general law for enforcement for contract cities in the Ventura County. I think the newest one is 1982. Ours, I believe, is 1979.
Yes.
I don't think there's a single contract city that has anything that's other than decades old in terms of contract services in Ventura County. Goleta, for example, has an updated, in 2014, a contract with Santa Barbara County. Carlsbad recently updated, not Carlsbad. Calabasas recently updated one for 2014. The reason I mention this is that we have extremely archaic language in the contract for very important service. And there was talk that the sheriff was going to be talking about updating the contract last year. That did not happen. I think we should expect that Ventura County get around to this, because there are, for example, two things in this our current contract from 40 years ago, 30 years ago, that is problematical as times have changed. And I'm going to mention two things. I'm not asking that we're not going to be, I want to get the council feeling about this. Number one, there's a statement in section 2.2 of our contract with law enforcement that says, "The sheriff shall enforce the statutes of the state of California and such municipal policy ordinances of the city as are of the same type or nature as ordinances of the county, which are enforced by the sheriff in the unincorporated territory of the county." And it seems to me that should read, "The sheriff shall enforce the statutes of the state of California and the municipal police ordinances of the city, period." As opposed to language which seems to carve out saying, well, the sheriff's is going to be our police department, but it's not really going to enforce our ordinances that are different from the unincorporated area. And as you know, we are a city that kind of prides ourselves on doing things our own way. And I think that's a problem, that kind of language. And for the record, when I looked at the contract, the more updated contract in Calabasas with LA County and with Goleta in Santa Barbara County, there's nothing like that language in those contracts. They're very straightforward. You contract with the city in law enforcement, you enforce the municipal code of that city, period. That's the way the language is, without this kind of strange carve-out from this contract from decades ago. And so I think that's an example of where it's important that the contract be looked at and be updated. I don't know what the feeling of council is about changing language or asking the sheriff if they're okay with changing the language. They probably would not be, because they like to have a standard contract. But I'll speak on that point. These contracts that right now are with contract cities are over a period of more than around a decade, and they're not exactly the same, the ones we have in place now in Ventura County. So there's some work to be done here, I think. And then another thing that bothers me is when there's a language here on section 2.5 that says the sheriff shall give prompt consideration to all requests of the city regarding the delivery of general law enforcement services. The sheriff shall make every effort to comply with these requests. It leaves open the possibility that the contractee can simply tell the contractor, well, we don't really, they're not required to respond to a request. It's simply that they will get consideration to it. I think that's a problem too. I think if you're paying a lot of money and you're contracting for this essential service, that the city manager or the mayor, if they have an issue regarding the delivery of general law enforcement services, there ought to be a contractual obligation to respond in some concrete and positive way, as opposed to just giving consideration to responding. So I just wanted to get my comments in. It's kind of an opening discussion. Obviously, we need to go ahead and approve the request for services, but I just think there's some broader issues I wanted to bring up for discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
And Mayor Blatz, I just want to respond to Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick about his request to updating the contract, which I absolutely agree and appreciate you bringing the points up and giving us perfect examples of how it's updated and other cities that have updated their language. In terms of, this is something that you brought up, I recall at the beginning of the year, last year, and we were told that the sheriff was going to be looking at contract. That's why we kind of put it on hold. You're absolutely right. I think that our first attempt would be to talk to our chief of police and see if we could start the conversation of updating our contract language. I think that would be appropriate for the reasons that you brought up, and I could definitely support that.
I agree, and I think that if you look at particularly 2.5, the other one,
2.3 has the same issue.
the 2.2, I think we definitely need to look at. 2.3, I'm not sure I understand exactly what it means. I think that in 2.5, we need to ask the chief, what does that actually mean? I think it lacks a definition of general law enforcement services, because it says that the sheriff will give us consideration to all requests regarding the delivery of general law enforcement services. I don't know if that means that if we request that he does it in a particular way, he will give it consideration. I don't know.
Don't know.
Because I don't think he has a choice in terms of doing it. And then the other part says the sheriff will make every effort to comply with these requests if they are consistent with good law enforcement practices, which means that if the city were to say, you need to do this law enforcement in this way, the sheriff's department has the ability to say no.
Of course.
And I think that's what that means, but I'm not sure.
I think.
Yeah, so I think it could use some clarification.
I also think their fallback is always, and everything I've read in here, is up to county levels. So their fallback position on anything, any service that they're providing, is going to fall back to whatever services are used or utilized in the county.
Right.
That's their fallback in everything that they say here.
Right. Well, it's because they're a county agency.
Right.
And my only issue is that we're contracting for police services, law enforcement services in our city, and our city ordinances just simply are trying to accomplish things that with at times the police powers of the city that are different from the county.
Sure.
Well, I think one last statement for me is just the fact that the police services that we are receiving are exceptional.
Absolutely.
So I don't want this discussion to seem like we're unhappy or discouraged with it, but our policing in this valley is exceptional.
Yes,
And I
it is.
agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. All right.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve the request for services.
Okay. Is there a second?
So I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Oh, this is a discussion item. Does
Oh,
anybody
I thought
wish
we had
discuss it?
to approve it. We do have to approve it.
But I think he's asking if there's further
Yeah.
conflict.
Mr. Closey?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, members. In the discussion, what I've heard is that there is really a whole dispatcher over there, and there's really a whole chief of police over there, but they both have other duties, and there may be monies that come back and that sort of thing. I'm wondering if the same is true of the half a detective and half a cadet. And also, it says the minimum level of service is 2 24-hour patrol cars. I understand that requires 10 officers to do 24 hours, seven days a week. But in fact, do we really have 2 cars that are county sheriff's cars marked Ojai Police, or are there 4, and we get about half time on the average from each of those 4 cruisers, or I know one's an SUV, but do we get half time out of 4, or do we get all the time out of 2? I'm just curious. Thank you.
I can give you just a general answer to that, unless you can offer anything to it.
Well, I can offer that we always have 2 deputies patrolling the streets in Ojai. We have 4 vehicles. We have 4 vehicles assigned to the city, 2 are spares, but we have 2 officers, actually 4 officers each day doing 2 12-hour shifts a day.
We also have 1 California Highway Patrol that services the valley as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other comments by the public? No? All right, I'll bring it back now. We had a motion.
I'll make a motion to direct city manager to submit a request for services to the Ventura County Sheriff Department for fiscal year 2016-2017 for the services recommended in the draft fiscal year 2016-17 budget.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, we're going to adjourn as the Ojai City Council for a moment and convene as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency. And I will entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
So move.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. And we are now going to reconvene, we're going to adjourn as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency, reconvene as the Ojai City Council. We have no discussion items under the successor agency. And now we'll go to reports from city manager. Do you have anything tonight, Mr. McCleary?
I have a few items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One, I know that there's been some efforts to have the city of Ojai be recognized as a International City of Peace. And to that extent, there is a ribbon cutting scheduled for Thursday, 10 a.m. at Rotary Park. I believe our Mayor Pro Tem will be present for that, where they will be unveiling the official sign demarking us as a city of peace. So that is coming up. We will put together a press release about the revisions to the FEMA flood map, so thank you for pointing that out. We will work on getting something out on that. We'll be bringing forward on June 28th an amendment to the animal control agreement. The original amendment that they had asked the city to consider back in the spring, they had withdrew. So I will be preparing a staff report that outlines that. The amount that we have in the draft budget is not changing. We still have that $58,000 in there, and we believe that we can meet that. So we will be bringing that forward for the 28th and for some discussion. Staff did meet with Mr. Keat, the gentleman who had addressed the council at the oral communications on the May 24th meeting regarding the issues that he was having with his historic building. Staff did meet with him to clarify the options, including some of the things that he could do in terms of the historic report so that he could go forward with the repairs or potential changes that he's looking at that property. So I think that was a productive meeting. We are undergoing a fee study at the process. I know our practice has been to try to adopt an update to the fee schedule when we adopt the budget. However, we're still working on that. So we would anticipate that coming in a couple of months after we get the budget adopted. Also want to note that work is moving forward on the environmental for the bike park. I don't have a date on when that will be ready, but we do have that high on the list, and we're working to get that through. And I think that's everything on my list. Thank you.
Okay, any questions of the city manager?
I have a compliment. When I walked in and saw all that array of handouts and forms and structured way of communicating with staff, it was thrilling. I mean, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McClary, for getting everything together and focused and doing that. I think it's a great step forward.
Well, I can't take too much credit for that.
I'm sure it was your direction.
We're also looking
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Also looking to improve the signage in the lobby too, to make it a little bit easier for the folks coming in and also to hopefully minimize some of the disruptions to staff. So we're working on that as well.
Thank you.
So I had two questions for
Yes.
Steve. Steve, the direction regarding having the building and safety report to you.
Yes.
Are you going to do that, or are you going to wait until the RFP comes through and work that out on that? I'm just asking.
Yeah, honestly, I've just had a lot of issues that I've been trying to work through, so I've been trying to work to implementing that. We just closed on the RFP period, so I'll be taking a look and seeing at the responses there, and get that calendared for city council consideration. But I am meeting with staff a little bit later this week to talk about that and get some clarity there.
And then the second thing is, I know that Jeff Palmer from the sanitation district had asked for a response to his letter.
Yes.
I know that you are personally working on that.
I have actually personally directed our city attorney and community development director to draft a response to that, which I will be taking a look at it prior to sending out to Mr. Palmer.
And that's coming from your office.
That will be coming from my office. We'll make sure to copy the council as well as the Cultural Resources Committee on that.
Any other questions of Mr. McClary? No? Mr. Summers?
Two brief items. One, just to let the council know that the Venskous lawsuits, Venskous versus City of Ojai and City of Ojai Planning Commission was dismissed last week before the hearing on the demur. So that is closed. It was dismissed with prejudice. The item is done. And two, on a sad note, or a potentially sad note, an update for the council on wireless issues. Just today, a terrible bill was put on the legislature's dais. AB 2788 is the gut amendment of an existing bill by Assemblymember Gatto out of Burbank. It's effectively a land grab by the wireless industry that would provide for forced approval for most new wireless antennas, whether on the public right-of-way or not, at a fairly large size, without any regard for local requirements or height. It would convert them all that would fall within its provisions would be converted to forced ministerial approvals with no local discretionary approval, which would, of course, dovetail with Section 6409 that requires that the city approve certain, quote, non-substantial amendments to existing wireless facilities also under a fast-track approval process with limited ability to control them. The League is considering formal opposition to the bill. I'd recommend that the council speak to your legislators and consider opposing the bill. That's AB 2788, and I'll keep the council apprised as it moves through the legislature.
Would it be appropriate, just one question, would it be appropriate for us as a council to agendize that for instructing either staff or the mayor to send a letter to our legislators?
Yes.
Okay, then I would like to do that.
Any particular date you'd like to see that come back? I apologize.
I don't think it should be a lengthy discussion item, so
Okay.
I'd say let's get that on. I'm fine with being on the 28th of.
Might even be a consent issue.
Yeah.
Consent item, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
So
fine
directed.
with that.
Yeah. where do we stand in the legislature with the budget deal that the governor wanted to engage in with respect to taking, since you raised the issue of taking away local discretion, taking away local discretion in terms of affordable housing developments?
The governor, thank you for the point. The governor released a slight modification to the draft bill, and for those who aren't aware of it, this is a budget trailer bill released in draft form by the governor's office to be added to the budget when the budget is approved in June, that would provide for ministerial approval of certain affordable housing projects without, again, no regard to discretionary approval by the city, which also exempts it from CEQA, and would provide that as long as a affordable housing project meets certain requirements with respect to affordability levels and is consistent with, quote, objective city's zoning standards and general plan standards, the city would be forced to approve it. There's lots of loopholes built into that particular proposal, including no clarity as to what they mean by objective standards. There's an exception for areas that are within a very high fire hazard severity zone, but there's a further exception to the exception for areas for projects that are on sites designated for affordable housing, with no clarity as to what that means, whether that's, for example, a site called out in a housing element is designated affordable housing, or just a site zoned for housing, which you would imagine the developers' lawyers would push for that type of language. The governor modified it slightly late last week, and it is still in consideration. My expectation, based on conversations with the league and with other city attorneys, is that something will pass, not quite as bad as that current proposal, something a little more protective of local control, but it will not likely be fairly protective of local control. It'll be pushed on the affordable housing side. It's clear that this is the year that the governor wants to do something about affordable housing, that Sacramento, most legislators want to do something about affordable housing. He's put together the coalition, so I expect something along those lines will pass. And we'll keep the council updated.
Anything else, Mr. Summers?
That's it.
Lieutenant, you have anything? No? Amber? Nothing? Anything else to come before us? All right. We are now going to go into a closed session conference with labor negotiator under Government Code Section 54-957.6. Are we expecting to have any report?
I do not expect to report out the items discussed in closed session tonight with regard to direction to the city's labor negotiator, interim city manager, Steve McClary, will be presented for formal approval by the council when they approve the budget.
Okay.
In open session.
Okay. Then we're going to adjourn to closed session.
Hi, Stan.